I Love Lucy is remembered as one of the most joyful, groundbreaking sitcoms in television history, a show that brought laughter to millions and set the standard for modern comedy. Yet behind the bright lights and perfectly timed jokes, one of its stars, Vivian Vance, faced a much darker reality. While audiences adored her as the witty, lovable Ethel Mertz, Vance herself often felt trapped, undervalued, and overshadowed. Her time on the show was marked by creative frustrations, personal struggles, and a toxic working relationship that left scars long after the cameras stopped rolling. What looked like a dream role was, in her own words, one of the biggest rip-offs of her career. To truly understand her journey, we have to explore the hidden challenges that shaped both her life and her legacy. On screen, Ethel and Fred Mertz were a comedy goldmine. Their constant bickering, quick-witted exchanges, and humorous timing gave I Love Lucy some of its most memorable moments. To audiences at home, they seemed inseparable, a couple whose quirks balanced Lucy and Ricky's antics and added an extra layer of charm to the show. Many fans truly believed Vivian Vance and William Frawley must have shared the same kind of chemistry off-screen. The reality, however, could not have been further from that image. From the very beginning, Vance and Frawley struggled to get along. Their working relationship was strained, marked by sharp words, visible discomfort, and a lack of respect on both sides. Crew members later recalled how icy the atmosphere could become during rehearsals, and how often tension spilled over into small clashes backstage. While they remained professional when the cameras rolled, once the lights went off, the warmth disappeared instantly. Part of the conflict came from their clashing personality. Vance was a trained stage actress with a background in serious theater, used to discipline, precision, and artistic ambition. Frawley, on the other hand, was a veteran of vaudeville, known for his old-school style and blunt humor. Where Vance valued refinement, Frawley often leaned into sarcasm and harsh comments, sometimes even poking fun at her appearance and wardrobe. Those remarks cut deep, especially for a performer already feeling constrained by the role of Ethel. The tension became so well known on set that it turned into an unspoken rule. Vance and Frawley would do their jobs, deliver the laughs, and then retreat to their separate corners. Co-stars and crew sometimes stepped in to smooth things over, but the underlying resentment never truly disappeared. To the public, they were a beloved TV couple. Behind the curtain, they were simply colleagues enduring each other out of necessity. This hidden battle between two central figures of the show is one of the great contrasts of I Love Lucy. It highlights how the magic of television can mask deep divisions, transforming private hostility into seamless entertainment for millions. For Vivian Vance, this strained relationship would weigh heavily on her throughout the series and beyond, leaving scars that shaped the way she remembered her years on the show. The roots of Vivian Vance's frustration with I Love Lucy can be traced back to casting decisions that in her eyes felt more like a compromise than a celebration of her talent. Vance was a skilled stage actress with years of experience in serious theater. She carried herself with a youthful energy and sophistication, only 2 years older than Lucille Ball herself. When she was cast as Ethel Mertz, she expected the role to reflect her versatility. Instead, she was paired with William Frawley, an actor 22 years her senior, whose gruff demeanor and older appearance made the on-screen marriage look odd to her from the very beginning. Vance openly admitted that she found the casting choice uncomfortable. According to those close to her, she once remarked that Frawley should be playing my father, not my husband. To her, the mismatch wasn't just about appearances, it was about what it meant for her career. By being tied to a character who was meant to look frumpy, middle-aged, and secondary, she feared the industry would begin to see her in the same light. This was a painful thought for a woman who had once led Broadway productions and was capable of much more than playing the foil to another star. Frawley, for his part, did little to ease the tension. He came from the world of vaudeville, where improvisation, sarcasm, and blunt humor ruled the stage. While he embraced the chance to be on a hit sitcom, he didn't take kindly to Vance's private complaint. Their differences in training and outlook only deepened the divide. Where she valued subtlety and polish, He leaned on a rougher style that often clashed with her own approach. It was an uncomfortable partnership, one that forced Vance to balance her pride as an actress with the reality of being locked into a role that millions of people loved, even if she didn't. For Vance, this awkward pairing symbolized a career crossroad. She was grateful for the recognition the show brought her, but she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that Ethel Mertz might overshadow her true identity as an actress. That inner conflict would haunt her throughout the run of I Love Lucy, a constant reminder that sometimes the greatest success can come at the expense of personal fulfillment. As I Love Lucy grew into one of the most successful sitcoms of its time, the tension between Vivian Vance and William Frawley never eased. In fact, the longer they worked together, the more their dislike for one another seemed to harden. While audiences at home adored Fred and Ethel as a funny, lovable couple, the actors behind them barely tolerated being in the same room. The laughter shared by millions was built on an uneasy truce that only lasted as long as the cameras were rolling. After the series ended, the bitterness didn't simply fade away, it deepened. When producers floated the idea of a spin-off show featuring Fred and Ethel, Vance immediately rejected it. To her, the thought of working with Frawley again was unbearable, no matter how much money or fame it might have brought. Her refusal effectively killed the project before it even began, a clear sign of how strong her feelings were. In a business where career opportunities were rare and valuable, Vance's decision showed just how determined she was to distance herself from her on-screen partner. The hostility between them became so well known in Hollywood that it took on a life of its own in stories and gossip. Years later, when Frawley passed away in the mid-1960s, rumors spread that Vance openly celebrated the news, even hosting a gathering with friends. While some colleagues have suggested this story may have been exaggerated, the very fact that it circulated widely revealed how intense their feud had been. Whether or not the details were true, people believed them because the animosity between the two was no secret. For Vance, the end of her working relationship with Frawley was more than just personal relief. It was the closing of a chapter that had weighed heavily on her throughout I Love Lucy. She had endured years of biting remarks, creative frustration, and the stress of maintaining professionalism next to a man she couldn't stand. The fallout of their feud reminds us that even the most beloved partnerships on screen can be built on fragile foundations, hiding deep divisions that the audience will never see. While the feud with William Frawley was one source of stress for Vivian Vance, her working relationship with Lucille Ball presented its own set of challenges, though of a very different kind. From the earliest stages of casting, Ball made it clear she had a specific vision for who Ethel Mertz should be. She wanted Lucy Ricardo to shine as the glamorous, ambitious, and often over-the-top housewife. To balance that, she believed Ethel needed to be more ordinary, a character whose plain appearance would highlight Lucy's energy and charm. This vision caused immediate hesitation when Vance was suggested for the role. Ball, only 2 years younger than her co-star, worried that Vance's youthful looks and polished stage background would make the two women seem too similar. In interviews, Ball admitted she had imagined Ethel as older and less stylish, someone who could fade into the background while Lucy commanded the spotlight. Casting Vance, who was attractive, witty, and confident, seemed to contradict that plan. Still, Ball ultimately agreed to give Vance the part, but not without setting strict conditions. Wardrobe choices for Ethel were deliberately plain and unflattering, designed to keep the character from competing visually with Lucy. According to accounts from crew members, Ball even encouraged Vance to gain weight, ensuring that the contrast between the two women remained clear on screen. For a stage-trained actress who had once played leading roles, these restrictions felt stifling. Vance later admitted that she sometimes felt like a piece in Lucy's puzzle, a supporting element carefully shaped to fit Ball's vision. Every gesture, every expression, and even small details like where to place her hands were often directed by Ball, who oversaw nearly every aspect of the production. For Vance, who had spent years building a career based on her own talent and instincts, this level of control was difficult to accept. And yet, despite the strain, Vance learned how to channel her frustrations into motivation. She adapted, refined her timing, and found ways to make the most of the space she was given. Over time, What began as a relationship of doubt and caution slowly transformed into one of mutual respect, laying the foundation for the deep friendship that would later define their bond. But in those early years, Vance was still fighting to prove she belonged, even as she wore the plain costumes and carried the burdens that came with being Ethel Mertz. What began as hesitation and strain between Vivian Vance and Lucille Ball slowly evolved into one of the most genuine friendships in Hollywood. In the early days of I Love Lucy, Ball's doubts about casting Vance lingered. She worried her co-star might outshine her, and the restrictions placed on Vance's appearance and performance reflected those insecurities. For Vance, these limitations were frustrating, but she responded not with rebellion, but with professionalism. She studied the rhythm of Ball's comedy, adapted to the demands of the role, and began finding her own moments of brilliance within the character of Ethel. Audiences noticed. Vance's timing was impeccable. She could raise a laugh with a single glance or perfectly delivered line. Even Ball, who had been skeptical, came to realize how valuable her co-star truly was. Over time, she shifted from being controlling and protective of her spotlight to admiring the way Vance elevated the show. What started as a cautious working relationship grew into a mutual respect built on shared laughter, long hours on set, and the unique pressure of carrying one of the most popular shows on television. As the years passed, that respect deepened into genuine affection. By the end of the 1950s, the two women were no longer just co-stars. They were confidantes. They celebrated successes together, leaned on one another during personal struggles, and forged a bond that endured well beyond the series. When Vance later faced serious health challenges in the 1970s, Ball remained by her side, visiting, calling, and reminiscing about their time together on set. Their friendship became so strong that Ball would later say losing Vivian was like losing a sister. The transformation from rivals to allies was rare in Hollywood, where competition often strained relationships beyond repair. Instead, Vance and Ball proved that respect could grow out of difficulty, and that true partnership could exist behind the cameras as well as in front of them. Their bond not only strengthened their performances on I Love Lucy, but also gave both women something even more valuable: a lifelong friendship built on trust, laughter, and shared history. While personal tensions and friendships shaped life behind the scenes, I Love Lucy was also quietly rewriting the rules of television itself. At the heart of this revolution was Desi Arnaz, alongside Lucille Ball, who together ran Desilu Production. Arnaz had a vision that went far beyond simply telling funny stories. He wanted to change how those stories were captured and shared with the world. In the early 1950s, most television shows were either performed live in front of an audience or filmed with a single camera, giving them a flat, stage-like appearance. Arnaz and cinematographer Carl Freund believed they could do better. They pioneered the use of a 3-camera setup, filming episodes before a live studio audience. This innovation achieved something remarkable. It preserved the energy and laughter of a real crowd, allowed for dynamic camera angles, and gave editors the flexibility to craft each scene with precision. For the actors, it felt like performing in a theater, with instant feedback from the audience's laughter and applause. For viewers at home, it brought a sense of vibrancy and authenticity that television had never captured before. The changes didn't stop with the camera. Arnaz also negotiated a groundbreaking financial arrangement. Instead of handing over all rights to CBS, Desilu retained ownership of the show. This bold decision meant that I Love Lucy could be syndicated after its original run, bringing the series to audiences around the world for decades to come. That strategy not only ensured steady revenue, but also gave Desilu the resources to expand into new projects, eventually launching iconic series like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. For Vivian Vance, these innovations shaped her experience as well. Performing in front of a live audience gave her a chance to use her theater training, fueling her comedic timing and stage presence. She once described the format as acting in a play every week, where each laugh confirmed her instincts as a performer. While her role as Ethel came with personal struggles, the production style allowed her talent to shine in ways that might have been lost in a traditional studio setup. What started as an experiment became the industry standard. The techniques pioneered by I Love Lucy influenced nearly every sitcom that followed, From Cheers to Friends to Seinfeld, behind the laughter of Lucy and Ethel was a quiet revolution that forever changed the way television was made, proving that innovation could be just as powerful as comedy in shaping a legacy. For all the success that I Love Lucy brought her, Vivian Vance often described her role as both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, Ethel Mertz made her a household name and earned her historic recognition in the television industry. On the other, the character began to overshadow her personal identity and artistic ambitions. To millions of viewers, she wasn't Vivian Vance the actress, she was simply Ethel. This typecasting weighed heavily on her. Fans would stop her in grocery stores or on the street and call her by her character's name, rarely acknowledging her as Vivian. While many performers embrace such familiarity as a sign of success, Vance felt it robbed her of her individuality. Privately, she carried reminders of who she really was, holding on to her sense of self in small personal ways. The role that had given her fame was also slowly erasing the boundary between her career and her identity. The pressure only grew when she reunited with Lucille Ball for The Lucy Show in the 1960s. This time, Vance made a bold request. Her new character would not be called Ethel. Instead, she insisted on playing Vivian Bagley, a way of signaling to both the industry and the public that she was not defined solely by her old role. It was an unusual move in an era when networks often clung to familiarity. But Vance knew it was necessary. She wanted to prove she could bring humor and heart to the screen without forever being tied to the shadow of Ethel Mertz. Still, the association lingered. Critics and audiences often compared her new performances to her days on I Love Lucy, and Vance sometimes expressed frustration that her earlier achievements in theater were forgotten. Before becoming a TV star, she had led stage productions and earned respect as a serious actor. Yet in Hollywood, she often felt overlooked, her contributions dismissed as secondary to the larger-than-life persona of Lucille Ball. Even with those struggles, Vance refused to give up. She continued to work in television and theater, carving out opportunities where she could. Her determination to break free from typecasting made her a quiet pioneer for actors who, like her, longed to be seen as more than a single character. In many ways, her battle to redefine herself was just as important as her success on screen, reminding future performers that fame can be both a gift and a cage. Despite the frustrations of typecasting and feeling overshadowed, Vivian Vance's talent did not go unnoticed. In 1953, just 2 years after I Love Lucy premiered, she made television history by becoming the first woman ever to win an Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress. It is a milestone moment, both for her and for the industry. Until then, supporting performers were often overlooked, but Vance's work as Ethel Mertz proved that secondary characters could be just as vital to a show's success as the stars. Her Emmy win was followed by 3 more nominations in 1954, 1956, and 1957, cementing her reputation as a consistently strong performer. Colleagues praised her sharp timing and her ability to draw laughter with even the smallest gestures. A raised eyebrow, a perfectly timed pause, or a look of exasperation at Lucy's latest scheme. Audiences might have seen Ethel as the ordinary housewife, but Vance infused the role with depth, wit, and heart. She turned what could have been a forgettable character into someone millions adored. Still, even as the accolades rolled in, Vance struggled with the feeling that her achievements were being overlooked in the bigger picture. Media coverage often focused almost entirely on Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, leaving little space for the contributions of the supporting cast. Friends later recalled that Vance was proud of her success, but sometimes felt invisible compared to the towering fame of her co-stars. To her, the Emmy was proof of her value, but she longed for recognition that extended beyond just Ethel. Privately, she also worried that awards and nominations might only reinforce her association with the role she was trying to escape. She wanted to be remembered not just as Lucy's friend, but as Vivian Vance, the actress who had conquered Broadway stages and could hold her own in any dramatic or comedic role. Yet in Hollywood, breaking free from the character of Ethel remained an uphill battle. Even so, Vance never let those doubts stop her. She continued performing in television projects, returned to the theater, and sought opportunities that would remind people of her range. The Emmy on her shelf was more than just a trophy. It was a symbol of her resilience, a reminder that even while fighting personal frustrations, she had left an undeniable mark on television history. As the years passed, it became clear that I Love Lucy was far more than just another sitcom. It was a cultural milestone, and at the heart of its magic was not only Lucille Ball's brilliance, but also the balance that Vivian Vance brought to the screen. Ethel Mertz was more than Lucy's sidekick. She was the grounding force, the character audiences could see themselves in. Loyal, witty, sometimes skeptical, but always deeply human. Without Vance's warmth and timing, the chaos of Lucy's adventures would have lacked the heart that made the series so relatable. The legacy of her work continued long after the show's final episode. The Emmy Awards, critical praise, and countless reruns ensured that Vance's name remained tied to the golden age of television. Even decades later, younger generations discovered I Love Lucy through syndication and streaming platforms, laughing at episodes first aired in the 1950s as if they were brand new. Her performance held up across time, proving that truly great comedy never grows old. Beyond the laughs, Vance's story carried lessons for actors who followed. She showed that supporting roles could be just as important as leads, and that even within creative restrictions, an actor could carve out unforgettable moments. She also demonstrated courage by pushing back against typecasting, insisting on being recognized as more than just Ethel. In doing so, she opened doors for performers who feared being trapped in a single role. Her influence stretched beyond the sitcom itself. The success of I Love Lucy and Desilu Productions fueled the creation of other groundbreaking shows, from Star Trek to Mission Impossible. Vance's contributions were woven into that legacy as well. She was part of the team that not only entertained millions, but also transformed television into a global cultural force. To this day, Vivian Vance is remembered not only for her sharp comedic timing, but also for her perseverance. She faced doubts, restrictions, and personal battles, yet she managed to leave behind a body of work that continues to inspire. Her journey reminds us that sometimes the most enduring legacies are built quietly, through resilience, professionalism, and the ability to make audiences laugh across generations.